Over to you, Paula.
Good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for coming so numerous. We are really happy to welcome you this afternoon to our Sovereign Cloud Day. And I know we have been mentioning quite a little bit of the EU regulations recently. It is a topic of great curiosity and a great conundrum for everybody. So I have brought in two very smart people who have their ears on the ground in Brussels and spend a lot of time in the Brussels bubble. And well, before we dive into it, and they will give us a little bit of their testimony about what they have been seeing so far, what is the state of your EU regulation. But before we dive into that, I will let them introduce themselves, each of them. Maria, please, would you start?
Thank you very much, Paula, and thank you very much for the invitation to BEREC to this event and to allow us to join this very interesting discussion. I am a legal officer at the CNMC, which is the Spanish Competition and Regulatory Authority. We are convergent regulators, so we regulate all sectors, energy, media, postal, transportation, and telecommunications, which is my field of expertise. But I am here today representing BEREC. BEREC is a body of European regulators for electronic communications, and is a European institution that has three main objectives. One is ensuring that telecom regulation is applied in a coherent manner all across the EU. We also give support to each other when implementing the European regulations in the sector. And probably the most important task that we have in our hands when we come to today's discussion is that we are also formally assigned a role as an advisory body for telecommunications and digital matters to the EU institutions, the Commission, and of course the co-legislators, the Parliament and the Council. One particularity of BEREC compared to other European agencies is that we work on a basis on a bottom-up approach. That means that everything we do is based on the experience of regulators, of national regulators in each of the member states. So we work in organizing working groups that are composed by experts from national regulators, and I am co-chair together with a Dutch colleague from the Dutch Markets Authority of a working group which is called Planning on Future Trends. So the objective of my working group is providing telecommunications regulators with a broader view of everything that's going on in the digital ecosystem, and also with a forward-looking perspective of any trend, any development that may, at the end of the day, impact electronic communications networks and services. And within this framework, this year we have two work streams. One is that we are working on a report on cloud and edge computing, and we are also working with an external consultancy on a report on the cloudification, virtualization, and softwareization of electronic communications networks that it's almost finished and will be published next month.
Thank you, Maria. Damia, please would you tell us a little bit more about who you are and who you represent, because you're representing a very interesting association today.
Maybe we can go to this. So thank you, Paula, for the invitation. So my name is Damir Filipovic. I'm Secretary General of the Alliance for IoT and Edge Computing Innovation. And I always have like almost a joke saying that you cannot put everything you do in name, so it's not just IoT and Edge. Actually, the focus is at the moment more on cloud, edge, IoT, especially in the, I would say, industrial domain, so not that much on the, let's say, consumer side. And from my background, I'm an engineer. I actually started to work also with the telecom regulator before and with the national ministry in Croatia. Then I came 10 years to telecom, so to the nemesis of the regulator. And then I went to Brussels, working both for the operators there and then for some other associations and also for Samsung. So I think I have a bit of a broader, let's say, overview of industry and quite a lot of topics. And now what we are trying to do in the Alliance, just to give you, okay, this is just a bit about the organization. and it's all public. But what I wanted to show is more like that you see very briefly pretty much all the topics that were mentioned. The only, I would say, two maybe additional differences is quite a bit of focus on research and innovation that was mentioned by Rajiv. And I think it's a very important point because none of it, of course, as Laurent and others said, will not be solved magically by the regulation. So you need to also have innovative element there, and without the research to get actually focus on the right things and scale at the European level, not much will happen. One good example of this is so-called SNS or Smart Networks and Services Partnership, which is to build basically 6G. But 6G is not just like classical network connectivity. It's what was already mentioned by Maria. So it's cloudification, virtualization, integration, we can say, from, I would say, classical connectivity network architectures to actually platforms and implementation. And I think this is quite important. On a policy and standardization, you see that actually we pretty much cover all the topics that were mentioned, plus added immersive, because what is usually called quote-unquote metaverse, we call it immersive technologies, especially in industrial domain, is also something that we think will come. And of course that for this, you also need this cloud edge IoT integration quite strong. So that's for the introduction, and then you tell us how you want to continue.
So I hope you're really curious now because, well, there's a lot of stuff in there. And actually, I went to the AIoTI signature event that happened at the 10th of October last month in Brussels. And I actually was confronted with quite a lot of new notions. The topic was computing continuum, the next frontier of the IoT, Edge, and Web 3.0. And it was focused on how the wow, you see, I had learned a lot of stuff, but there were so many terms and terminology, and it was focused on how the computing continuum allows the exploitation of hybrid IoT edge cloud infrastructures. And it showed how edge intelligence allows for or enables artificial intelligence applications to be deployed and run on resource-constrained edge devices and IoT devices. We had great use cases to illustrate that this is not just some futuristic technology trend, but that it is a real use case-based approach today in helping resolve climate issues, CO2 reductions, manufacturing models and all of this. It was really, really an eye-opener. But what I really take away from it, and that is the focus for us today, is the fact of this transition from AI models to this edge cloud infrastructure and the ecosystem. And the question that was coming up and that I want to address to Damir today, and I hope he will give us an overview from his point of view, is how is the EU regulation coping with this? How are they keeping up? How are they following these developments? So I leave the floor to you.
Thank you. So I prepared a couple of more slides, but I think we don't need to go through that because a lot of things was already said. But let's go back to exactly to this question, regulation. First, I think regulation as such is not enough. And second, it's still, I would say, fractured, or let's say fragmented, because on one hand side, you have, let's say, telecom regulation and a couple of things going on there. Laurent mentioned, okay, where is the infrastructure? So it's not just telecom, it's broader. Then you have Interoperability Act, Gigabit Infrastructure Act, you have AI Act, Data Governance Act, 3 or 4 cybersecurity regulations, which all talk about the same, or actually a lot of things. It's not just telco, it's not just cloud, it's actually everything, including even some critical infrastructure, which means then, for example, energy, right, or health, infrastructure, and so on. So it's a very complex thing, and of course it's not easy to put everything into one, let's say, basket, but I still think there is a bit of the miss of the, let's say, a bit bigger picture. Situation is getting better, people are getting, let's say, more understanding, but I think this work really needs to continue, especially in implementation. Because if you now have new Data Act and AI Act, and you just completely separately implement them, and there is no any link or any logic between them, I don't think it will end up well. And then Interoperability Act and other things. Second point is, like already mentioned, research and innovation, which means there needs also be a logic there and link between the regulation and this. Laurent mentioned Alliance for the Cloud IoT Edge. Actually, one of the points of that alliance was to also suggest Commission not only input to regulation, but also to research priorities related to cloud edge IoT, which I think it's a good thing. And then the third thing is standardization, because in many of these new regulations, you will also have, for the compliance reasons, standardization standards that will be issued basically by the Commission. So you can say politically. So it will not come bottom up as standardization from within the industry, or that will come up from the research. That will be mandated, which means it's a bit of a different game, which means if you are talking about anything what you do, that's another layer you will have to add on the whole thing. So it's not just regulation, it's then also standards that come to that. And if they are not, let's say, maybe aligned with some other regions in the world, then it becomes complicated.
Thank you, Damien. I would take back this one.
Yes.
So the folks can see actually both your names when you're talking.
Yes, thank you.
Up, here we go. Wonderful. Maria, you have witnessed the regulatory efforts of the Commission over the past 5 years, but you have also contributed to it in your capacity as a Spanish representative for the Market Commission, but also in your role as
Part of BEREC.
Yes, as part of BEREC, thank you. As part of BEREC, where you have been contributing because there is a lot of reflection going on to try to help the Commission and all these institutions to make the regulation a little bit smarter. How have you been witnessing, can you tell us a little bit more about the transformation over the past 5 years from the soft law to the real regulation? But also maybe about the role of enforcement bodies?
Thank you for the question. Laurent already has given a very nice overview of all the regulations that we have in Europe at this moment, but I think that it's important also to take into account that many of these acts addressing to cloud services are quite new, and some of them, such as the Data Act, that is still in the pipeline, so they still need to be formally approved. And as Paula was mentioning, we do see that there's some signs that there is a transition in the European regulation coming from an approach to cloud services that was more based on the standardization and the codes of conduct and soft law in general towards regulation. So we seem that before 2021, there were a number of Commission communications. We had in 2012 Commission communication on cloud services. We of course had a very important European strategy for data in 2020. We had a joint declaration on cloud services in 2020 as well by the European ministers, right, the Council, that is putting forward very interesting ideas of how to build a European cloud federation. And those documents are very important, but they are basically political documents setting general objectives. We did have the free flow of non-personal data regulation that established tries to foster the SWIP initiative that is, maybe some of you have been involved in that, is a set of codes of conduct to facilitate switching and interoperability. But even if it is a regulation, it was still soft law. And of course, you may mention the GDPR, but I'm not going to deny there that the GDPR had a great impact, but it's not a regulation that was focusing on regulating the cloud. You say that it was some kind of a side effect. But since 2021, in only 2 years, if you are familiar with how things move in Brussels, this is quite, shows how high this is in the agenda now. In 3 years, we had the DMA, the Digital Market Act, that is including cloud services within the core plan for services that may be subject to regulation. So if a cloud provider meets the condition to be designated as gatekeeper, automatically they will have to comply with a number of obligations that are not specifically addressed to cloud, because they will all gatekeepers in other core platform services will have to comply with these regulations, but those imply very strong obligations in terms, for instance, of interoperability or of data portability. But in addition to that, the DMA is also a very strong tool in the hands of the Commission, because the Commission can also designate the gatekeepers when they find that the provider is in fact has this role. And they can also broaden the list of obligations by means of market investigations. So this is, we know already that initial assessment, self-assessment of who is a gatekeeper was published this summer, and no cloud provider has been identified as a gatekeeper, but still the Commission has this tool in its hands, and it's very important. And we also had the Data Governance Act that is aiming to facilitate and regulate data intermediation services. And of course, we have the Data Act that is still to be formally approved and published, but we already have a political agreement by the co-legislators, so it's going to be published very soon. And it's going to regulate for all cloud providers switching and interoperability, and also as a way to facilitate multi-cloud. And this is what we have, and there's more to come, because we, in my field, in the telecom part, we are now starting to discuss the DNA, the Digital Network Act. This is coming from a public consultation that the Commission launched early this year about the future of telecommunications. And since there was quite a strong debate in the media or also among the stakeholders about the first year, probably most of you know it about like the first year public consultation, but there were other questions in this request for information from the Commission. Some of them relate to the transformation of the electronic communications network into a cloud-based network. And also in the 10th of October, it was a very crucial date, the results of this public consultation were published. And Commission published a press release on this, and it was says very straightforward that this transition to cloud-based networks is going to imply huge changes in the sector, in the regulatory environment, in the value chains, and new investments will be required for that. And if this message in the official message from the Commission in its webpage was not enough, Commissioner Breton also published a post in his LinkedIn emphasizing that these changes will require a significant change, a total change of telecoms regulation as we know them today, and announced this new Digital Networks Act. So the question now is when it's going to happen, what is going to be there, and how. And it's a very valid question, because as I mentioned before, the procedures in Brussels and legislative procedures take some time. So what we know so far is that, and we have elections next year, so this is going. We have European elections. So what we know at this moment is that the Commission will publish a white paper at the beginning of next year, and it will be the new Commission that will develop these ideas into legislative proposal. So that means also that now there is the window of opportunity to make the proposals, because the legislators are listening to whatever can be proposed to reach these general objectives. And we already have some ideas on the table. We have heard about the need of investments and how to attract investments to make this transformation of the networks. We also have heard from the Commission that we need an EU policy that prevents this transformation to be dependent from external players or from external influence. And also there are some calls for the operators to gain a scale and to be able to compete and make Europe a leader in cloud-based networks. There are some proposals in this regard, like further harmonization of a spectrum or facilitating mergers within the EU. I know I'm out of time, so we'll stop here, and I may talk about the role of regulators if there's time afterwards.
We're happy to listen to you. Just, Damir, do you want to react before I try to summon it up a little bit and give the floor to you
Actually,
guys?
just to say one, I would say, hopefully, intriguing thought. You know, nominally, as we all said, when you look all of these regulations, none of them nominally it's about cloud, right? Nominally speaking. None of it. It's digital, something, Data Act, interoperability, AI, so on. If you see, in essence, it's all about cloud. It's all about cloud. All of it. Absolutely all of it. There is none of it that you can say no. So I mentioned Gaia X is doing data spaces. Where these data spaces reside? In the air? No, they reside in the cloud, right? So I mean, it's all about that. And all that comes out from the research, from the regulation, from standardization, it all ends up with the cloud. So this, I think, it's to kind of think about when someone says, oh, but we don't have a lot of cloud regulation. It's all of code of conducts and so on. I don't think so. I think actually it's quite regulated. And like Maria said, more to come. So that's just as a thought. And then, of course, it will lead to everything else, because like we are talking about, you know, computing continuum, which is then cloud, edge, IoT, connectivity, AI. And if you put all of it, that means all of it comes into the play. And you can't put one on the other. And let's see how that will pan out in the next 5 years.
I think we are having a little bit of a conundrum here, because we are at a period where we have been overwhelmed by a wave of regulation that is, on the one hand, very fragmented. On the other hand, it tries to cover it all. It all connects to cloud and data in the end. And so everything has been, well, thrown at us quite at the same time. All these regulations are still at an infancy stage. They're fragmented, there's not yet the right level of standardization. And so they're in their infancy. We will still have a little bit of time, because everything will come to full-fledged implementation and enforcement. I think we will get a little bit of a reprieve here, because there are the parliament elections, the European Parliament that will be elected in next June. There will be a next commission by November 2024. So we have a little bit of a pause here. We can maybe try to absorb a little bit of what has been happening and make sense of all these regulations. However, there is a promise of more. I don't know, do we still have a little bit of time to think about implementation and enforcement, or do we maybe give the floor? Maybe, Maria, would you like to say one last word on enforcement, and then I'll take some questions?
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. As I said, yes, you're right. We are getting ready for that, and we have a number of work done by competition and regulatory authorities. You have probably seen that this is gaining attention not only from the legislators but also from us. We have seen in the UK a very comprehensive market study by Ofcom that they have submitted to the CMA, and this will be the initial step for a market investigation, and as CMA has announced that they will touch on the switching barriers, technical and commercial ones. So that is more or less what we are aiming to do with the Data Act here in Europe. So we are converging through different paths. Also, within the European Union, we had some market studies from the Dutch Market Authority, from ACM. That was very interesting. We also had a very recent one from the French Competition Authority. And as I mentioned before, we are investigating this matter in our own report. And it is in our DNA. We will focus on the interplay between cloud and telecommunication services, how this is impacting the sector, how the value chain is changing, how there are new dependencies, new needs. Besides that, we have to take into account what as I mentioned, we already have two very new acts, the DMA and the Data Act, that will have to be in the beginning of being implemented. With regard to the DMA, BEREC is part of the high-level group that is established by this regulation and is already meeting with the Commission and providing advice on how to implement these acts. And also, with regard to the Data Act, it is envisaged that telecom regulators are well placed to be designated as enforcement bodies at national level for switching and interoperability obligation. So for that reason, we have already envisaged in our work plan for next year a working group on how to develop this, how to do it. It's not an easy task. So we really look forward starting conversations with everyone to really take a good and well-informed decisions on this.
Thank you. I think that was Maria's call for you to actually go help these guys and bring up your ideas on what to regulate next and how to regulate it and how to implement it in a way that makes it actually work for you, for the companies, for the customers, for the users. And this is the moment for you to come up with questions. Please wait a second, there's a microphone coming up. And please tell us to whom you address the question. One of you want to?
No, I just couldn't hear the question.
The question, there was a little, I think there's, what's the point, if I sum it up correctly, what's the point if we don't implement it?
Without enforcement.
Yes.
There was no enforcement after Privacy Shield was overturned.
I think it's something that will be coming up. That's what I said. We have some reprieve before it's actually coming, but...
It's about enforcement of what? Why have it?
The regulator dragged its heels and avoided taking any sanction against Facebook or any of the other large technology giants after Privacy Shield was overturned. In fact, it colluded with Facebook to avoid having to do it.
Maybe let me take it. Maybe let me start and I give the floor to you. From what I have seen in my role of Government Relations Director for France and EU in VMware, is that we're having quite a lot of national authorities that are granted, that are being given attributed enforcement capacities right now. This is new for them, so there is a time for the setup that needs to be done right now. It is being done right now from what I heard from Maria, but it will come.
Yes, exactly, that's the point. We are, for instance, the Data Act that we are talking about is just, we have the political agreement, but it's still not formally been approved. We know what's going to be in there, but it needs to follow the process. And also, when it comes to the DMA, I understand that there is a sense of urgency from the industry, but it takes time. So, and also, as maybe you could say, well, you could do something as competition authority, because they had wide powers, but this also requires a lot of time and a lot of data, a lot of research, and that's why we have seen how the French Competition Authority has published this market investigation, and it's all that we do is data-driven. All we do is based on investigations, and I know it requires time, but it's not that we can really act so fast. But maybe, do you want to add?
End of the word, guys. We need to wrap it up. We're at the end of the session.
No, but just very quickly, I mean, it's a fair point. The thing is, as always, that nothing is, let's say, ideal. But if you see what is now happening with the Digital Services Act and Digital Markets Act, that's going to happen very fast. It already started to happen immediately after it was implemented. And you have coordination with the regulators and inputs and high-level group. And it's not just talking shop. Huh? These guys will actually talk about enforcement and how to do it, and now you have also the appointed people for DMA in every member states, like for the liaisons and so on. That's much more serious than it was for GDPR, huh? And much quicker, which means some lessons are being learned, and I think it will not wait for the new commission for these things to, come out. It took a lot of time, but now I think it will be.
But here we are.
I think there is political determination also within the member states, not just with the Commission, to actually really do it.
I think there has been a real awareness about the need for action, not just need for another policy.
Exactly.
And this is the closing word from us. We thank you for listening to us and leave the floor to the next.
Thank you.